I need to show you something that's happening right now in the financial markets, something that most people won't understand until it's too late. And by then, the opportunity will be gone. Gold just hit $4,000 per ounce. Silver reached all-time highs. And this isn't some random spike. This is the beginning of something much bigger, something that's been building for decades. Let me explain what's really going on here. Your currency is dying. Not tomorrow, not next year. It's dying right now, in real time. And the people who understand this are quietly moving their wealth into something that's survived every currency collapse in human history. Central banks know this. That's why they're buying gold at the fastest pace we've seen in over 50 years. These aren't retail investors panicking. These aren't YouTube commenters speculating. These are the institutions that control monetary policy, the people who print the money, and they're dumping their own currency to buy metal. Think about that for a second. The people who create dollars are trading those dollars for gold. What does that tell you? Let me take you back to a moment in history that most people have forgotten. August 15, 1971. President Nixon walks into the Oval Office and makes an announcement that changes everything. The United States is closing the gold window. No more converting dollars to gold. The Bretton Woods system is dead. At that moment, the dollar became what's called a fiat currency. It's backed by nothing except trust in the government. And here's what happened next. Gold was $35 an ounce in 1971. By 1980, it hit $850. That's a 2,300% increase in less than a decade. But here's what they don't tell you in the history books. It wasn't that gold became more valuable. The dollar became less valuable. Gold just maintained its purchasing power while the currency collapsed around it. Fast forward to today, we're seeing the exact same pattern but on a much larger scale. The difference is, this time it's not just the United States. It's the entire global financial system that's breaking down. Look at what's happening with BRICS nations. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They're creating alternative payment systems. They're settling trade in their own currencies. They're accumulating gold reserves at unprecedented levels. China alone has been adding to its gold reserves for months straight. Russia has been doing the same thing. These aren't random decisions. This is coordinated de-dollarization. They're preparing for a world where the dollar is no longer the global reserve currency. And here's the thing that should terrify you. When the dollar loses its reserve status, all those dollars that are currently held overseas are going to come flooding back into the United States. That's trillions of dollars chasing the same amount of goods and services. That's not inflation. That's hyperinflation. Now, I know what you're thinking. The government will step in. The Federal Reserve will fix it. They'll raise interest rates. They'll tighten monetary policy. But here's the problem. They can't. The United States government is carrying over $36 trillion in debt. Every time they raise interest rates, the cost of servicing that debt goes up. We're already spending more on interest payments than we spend on defense. If rates go much higher, the entire system becomes unsustainable. So they're trapped. They can either let inflation run hot and destroy the currency, or they can raise rates and bankrupt the government. There's no good option here. And the smart money knows this. That's why you're seeing institutional investors pile into gold and silver. That's why central banks are buying. That's why billionaires are converting paper wealth into physical assets. Let me tell you about what happened in 2008. When the financial crisis hit, gold was trading around $800 an ounce. Everyone said it was overvalued. Everyone said it would crash along with everything else. But it didn't. By 2011, gold hit $1,900. It nearly tripled while the stock market was still recovering from the crash. Why? Because when trust in the financial system breaks down, people run to safety. And for 5,000 years, that safety has been precious metals. But here's where it gets really interesting. In 2008, we had a banking crisis. Today, we have a currency crisis. And a currency crisis is much, much worse. When banks fail, the government can bail them out. They can print money. They can guarantee deposits. But when the currency itself fails, there's no bailout. There's no safety net. Your savings just evaporate. And we're seeing the early warning signs everywhere. Real interest rates are at their highest levels in 18 years, and gold is still hitting record highs. That's not supposed to happen. When real rates go up, gold is supposed to go down. But it's not, because the market is telling you something. The traditional relationships are breaking down. Now, if you're sitting on retirement savings, if you have money in a 401k or an IRA, you need to understand something. Those accounts are denominated in dollars. If the dollar loses half its value, your retirement loses half its value. It doesn't matter how well your stocks perform. It doesn't matter how diversified your portfolio is. If the underlying currency collapses, you lose. And here's something most people don't know. You can hold physical gold inside a retirement account. It's called a gold IRA. You can roll over your existing 401k or IRA into physical precious metals without triggering taxes or penalties. I put together a free guide that explains exactly how this works. It's in the description below. If you have $100,000 or more in retirement accounts, it's worth looking at, because the window to protect yourself is closing fast. All right, back to what's happening in the markets right now. Silver is doing something even more dramatic than gold. It just hit all-time highs. And there's a specific reason for this that most people are missing. Silver isn't just a monetary metal, it's an industrial metal. It's used in solar panels, electric vehicles, electronics, medical equipment. And here's the critical part. We're running out of it. Global silver production has been declining. Mines are getting depleted. And at the same time, industrial demand is exploding. We're in a structural supply deficit. That means we're consuming more silver than we're producing. And that deficit is getting worse every year. Now combine that with monetary demand. As people lose faith in currencies, they're buying silver as a store of value. So you have industrial demand increasing, supply decreasing, and monetary demand surging. That's a perfect storm for price appreciation. And here's the kicker. Silver is still historically cheap compared to gold. The gold-to-silver ratio is way out of whack. Throughout history, that ratio has averaged around 15 to 1. Today, it's over 80 to 1. That means silver is massively undervalued relative to gold. When that ratio corrects, and it always corrects, silver is going to explode higher. We're talking about potential gains that make gold look conservative. Let me paint you a picture of what's coming. Imagine you're living in Weimar, Germany in 1923. You've saved your whole life. You have money in the bank. You're responsible. You did everything right. And then hyperinflation hits. Within months, your life savings can't buy a loaf of bread. People are using wheelbarrows full of cash to buy groceries. The currency has become worthless. But here's what happened to the people who owned gold. They survived. They maintained their wealth. They could still buy food, still pay rent, still live their lives, because gold held its value while the currency collapsed around it. That's not ancient history. That's not some theoretical scenario. That happened in a modern, developed nation less than 100 years ago. And it's happened dozens of times throughout history. Argentina, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Turkey, Lebanon. Currency collapses are not rare. They're common. And every single time, the people who owned precious metals were the ones who preserved their wealth. Now, I'm not saying we're going to see Weimar-level hyperinflation tomorrow, but I am saying the conditions are in place for a serious currency crisis. And when that happens, it happens fast. You don't get a warning. You don't get time to prepare. One day everything seems fine, and the next day, your money is worth half as much. Look at what's happening with the COMEX. That's the commodities exchange where gold and silver futures are traded. There's a massive disconnect between paper gold and physical gold. On paper, there are claims to far more gold than actually exists in the vaults. It's a fractional reserve system, just like banking. And when people start demanding physical delivery, when they stop trusting the paper contracts, that's when the system breaks. Because there's not enough physical metal to satisfy all the claims. We're already seeing signs of stress. Premiums on physical gold and silver are elevated. Delivery times are extending. Dealers are running low on inventory. These are the early warning signs of a supply squeeze. And when that squeeze really kicks in, when the paper market breaks and everyone rushes to physical metal, the price is going to go parabolic. We're not talking about 20% gains. We're talking about multiples of the current price. Think about what happened with nickel in 2022. The London Metal Exchange had to halt trading because the price went vertical. It moved 250% in 2 days. The paper market completely disconnected from physical reality, and they had to shut it down to prevent a complete meltdown. That's what's coming for gold and silver, except they won't be able to shut it down, because this isn't just about one commodity. This is about the entire monetary system. Let me tell you about something called Gresham's Law. It's an economic principle that says bad money drives out good money. When you have two forms of currency, people will hoard the good one and spend the bad one. That's exactly what's happening right now. People are hoarding gold and silver. They're spending their dollars because they know which one is going to hold value and which one is going to lose value. And as more people figure this out, as more people start converting their paper wealth into physical assets, the velocity increases. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The more people buy metal, the higher the price goes. The higher the price goes, the more people want to buy. And the currency devaluation accelerates. We're in the early stages of that cycle right now. Most people still don't understand what's happening. They see gold hitting new highs and they think it's a bubble. They think it's going to crash. But they're looking at it backwards. Gold isn't going up. The dollar is going down. And it's going to keep going down because there's no way to stop it without crashing the entire economy. The Federal Reserve is stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they keep rates low, inflation runs hot and the currency devalues. If they raise rates, they bankrupt the government and crash the economy. There's no good option. So what are they going to do? They're going to choose the path of least resistance. They're going to let inflation run. They're going to devalue the currency because that's the only way to reduce the real value of the debt. And when they do that, when they really open up the monetary spigots, gold and silver are going to go to levels that seem impossible right now. Think about this. Gold hit $4,000 per ounce with relatively modest monetary expansion. What happens when they really start printing? What happens when they go full quantitative easing? What happens when they start buying corporate bonds, municipal bonds, maybe even stocks? We're talking about gold at $10,000, $15,000, maybe higher. And silver could easily hit triple digits. These aren't wild predictions. These are mathematical outcomes based on the amount of currency creation that's coming. Now here's what you need to understand about timing. You can't wait until everyone else figures this out. By the time gold is at $10,000 and silver is at $200, the opportunity is gone. You're not protecting your wealth at that point. You're just trying to catch up. The time to act is when things still seem relatively normal, when people are still skeptical, when the mainstream media is still telling you everything is fine. That's when you position yourself. Because once the crisis becomes obvious to everyone, it's too late. The premiums spike, the availability disappears, the dealers run out of inventory, and you're stuck holding depreciating currency while everyone else is scrambling for metal. I've been watching these markets for years. I've seen the cycles, I've seen the patterns, and I'm telling you, we are at a critical inflection point right now. The next 12 to 18 months are going to determine who preserves their wealth and who loses everything. Look at what's happening with geopolitical tensions. The Middle East is a powder keg. Ukraine and Russia are still at war. China and Taiwan are on edge. Trade wars are escalating. Every one of these conflicts puts pressure on the global financial system, and every one of them drives more people into safe haven assets. Gold and silver thrive on uncertainty, and we're living in the most uncertain time in modern history. But here's the thing that gives me the most conviction. The fundamentals have never been better for precious metals. You have supply constraints, increasing demand, currency devaluation, geopolitical instability, and a complete loss of faith in traditional financial institutions. Every single factor that drives gold and silver higher is in play right now, and they're all accelerating. The question isn't whether gold and silver are going higher. The question is how high they're going to go. And more importantly, are you going to be positioned to benefit from it? Because this isn't just about making money. This is about survival. This is about protecting everything you've worked for. This is about making sure that when the dust settles, you still have wealth. Your currency is dying. That's not hyperbole. That's not fear-mongering. That's mathematical reality, based on the amount of debt, the amount of money printing, and the structural problems in the global financial system. The people who understand this are moving their wealth into assets that can't be printed, can't be devalued, and can't be inflated away. They're buying gold. They're buying silver. They're getting out of paper and into physical assets. And they're doing it now, while there's still time, while the premiums are still reasonable, while the metal is still available, while most people are still asleep. Don't be the person who looks back in 2 years and says, I should have listened. Don't be the person who watches their retirement savings evaporate while gold is at $15,000 an ounce. Don't be the person who waits until it's too late. The wealth transfer that's coming is going to be the largest in human history. Trillions of dollars are going to move from people who hold paper assets to people who hold real assets, from people who trust the system to people who prepared for its failure. Which side of that transfer do you want to be on? The choice is yours. But the window is closing. Every day that passes, more people wake up to what's happening. Every day, more wealth flows into precious metals. Every day, the opportunity gets smaller. This is your moment. This is your chance to protect everything you've built, to secure your future, to turn your dying currency into forever wealth. Get metal. Get it now, before everyone else figures out what you already know.